What's up, everybody? A Sparrow with a Gun here from Sleepless Nights with another episode on the Space Reverse Engineers series. Surprise, surprise, we are working on the Apollo today. This was a really cool build that I featured in my last episode of the Inspiration series. That is a small ship grid that has been kind of bumped up to a very large scale. I believe, I might be misquoting a little bit, but I believe there's something like 19 or 20 floors or something on this. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's for those of you that haven't seen the Inspiration episode, I encourage you to check it out because there is a lot to see in this ship. Now, as I've said before, some of the building techniques can get a bit repetitive, so even though I'm going to be looking at some of the different building techniques, I may not go through every single room or showcase every little thing, just because one, the Inspiration is a bit more of the showing episode or showcase type thing, and two, some of the methods may be kind of the same in every spot. Now, one thing in particular that I thought was fairly interesting, and I'll have to get in here with a spectator camera, I think, to see what's really going on, is this thruster. And this is pretty cool because it's kind of designed to resemble the actual in-game thrusters, but yet it's clearly a much larger thruster, which is pretty neat. And admittedly, I thought the ship was significantly smaller because I looked at this and I was like, oh, it's just attached to one thruster? How does it have so many floors? And then when I got in game, I realized it was a custom-made thruster, and I'm like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense now. It does appear... Let me see where my spectator camera is. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here, and we can dive in a little bit more. So it does appear that there's more in the back here than just, you know, than basically just for show. Now, it is interesting that these hydrogen tanks don't appear to be connecting properly to, let me crank down the speed a little bit here. It doesn't appear like they're connecting to all of the thrusters, which is a bit odd. Unless, I could be mistaken, but unless they're connected in one spot, and then because all the thrusters are connected, it, by extension, connects all them up. That would make more sense to me. Let's see, it's probably in here, maybe. Possibly. Huh. I really don't see where these are lining up to anything. Can't all be for show. There's got to be a connection point somewhere. Ah, right here. Here we go. So, because this thruster is connected to the tanks, and then the tanks are all connected to each other, it looks like that's where the main transfer point is happening, is these two, probably. Or not two. Where was that? So it's on the sides. These two on the sides connect up. That's very interesting. And very unique use of the conveyor system so that you only need like one connection point. That's pretty cool. We've got gyroscopes back here, and probably the main connector point right here to begin with. Okay, we've got a conveyor that goes up to this one. That's probably the main connection, at least when it was built. So you've got gyroscopes, the connectors, and then this connects into the overall conveyor system, I would imagine. It's hard to see. There we go. Yeah, so then that just links back into the whole rest of the ship. Alright, that's cool. Now this is the one thing I'm not sure about. So I believe this to be a... oh, I need to be in my main body. I need to get back in my body. I believe this to be a gravity generator. If I can get a hold of it. It's hard to do because I don't think it belongs here. So this is something I brought up in the Inspiration episode, is I do think this is one of the few instances of a hypergrid on this build. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure. So there is a little bit of finagling for the gravity part. I imagine, I don't really know what that's for there, but I imagine it would not be too terribly difficult to find a spot to do like a large block grid. To do that. If you really didn't want to do any kind of hypergridding, you could probably modify it. But there is also some of this stuff down here, which is really cool. And it's making use of different heights with half blocks and color striping and things to give it a lot more detail. Now this is interesting too. I haven't seen this before. So we have a full block stripe, and then a half block to this shape I've never seen used very often. So we've got a slope with a rounded slope rather, to a ramp base, and then to a half block row. So that's pretty cool. And there was also, I don't know where it is. Yeah, see, there's a gravity generator, and that might be using the same, I think that is using the same grid tricks. But right in there, you probably could fit a transfer to a large grid if you didn't want to do the hyper stuff. Here's one of those rotor merge block hatches that we've seen show up not too... I swear I'm not doing this on purpose. This happened in my inspiration episode. I don't know what's blowing up. I hope I didn't do it. But this is another cool example of these new hatches we've seen come about, where when the merge block detaches, they become their own grid, and then the rotors can rotate them down, which is really neat because it makes a perfect seal, but it's a custom shape, which is why it's cool to me. It's not restricted to the airtight hangar doors that most of the time you have to use. So that's a pretty cool little trick of doing that kind of stuff. Also got these cool little shapes going on here. I'm thinking... Oh, this is actually full block to full block. I didn't realize that. I thought that was half block. So that's pretty cool. And then there's this. Now this is kind of tricky, but it's really cool. So this is the first one I've seen, this build, that uses this groove mechanic. It was something that got found a long time ago, for those of you that aren't aware. I don't know what the community's naming convention is for these kinds of... I usually call them glitch doors, but I don't know what what everybody calls them. But somebody found that if you got in a chair and then exited the chair, you could basically teleport and clip through the wall. But this one actually makes use of having a designated spot to scoot you over enough that it works pretty much every time. And the original versions of doing these were very temperamental and difficult to work with. So it's a little bit on the game-breaking immersion side. Like, obviously you're not supposed to be able to just phase through a door or a wall, but, you know, if the rest of your build's great like this one and you have trouble with figuring out how you want to do the doors or something, it is viable, it does work. It's just not exactly like RP friendly. If you're wanting to really feel like you're an astronaut or something, it kind of can break the feel. But it's a cool mechanic though, and I've never seen these done with a designated spot. Most of them just say you have to wiggle your way between the door and the seat. So it does seem like, I'm trying to figure out, we've got a 5-block floor space, which if you're including the wall would make it a 7-block long doorway. And then on the edge, minus the one from the door frame, is where they put the groove. And then that's seat's rotor there is 1 block away. And I don't remember why the rotor had to be there, but it does, for reasons. Again, when you're dealing with a glitch door like that, it's not really because the game mechanic makes sense, it's just how someone figured out that it worked. So that's 2 blocks, the rotor is 2 blocks in from the door. So if you were wanting to build a door that way, I'd recommend following this pattern, because it seems to work every time so far. So it's very cool. Now this is also, like I said, this ship is chock full of cool ideas. One that I like is this right here that we're seeing, this groove, and that's pretty simple. It's just going up a block and then having an outer frame, but I like how that works. This stairway is also, or this ladder rather, is really cool, and it's very simple. It's just the half-block slopes just stacked in the appropriate order, but it makes for a compact, it fits the small grid, doesn't feel too big or anything, but it actually does look like a legit ladder, which is pretty cool. Let's see here. I like these doorways as well. They've got full block, ramp slope, full block on the outer edge, and then half block on the side with ramp bases. Or no, that's still the ramp tips and a full block. I like that shape though. It's pretty cool, and it does fit your character fairly well. You do have to kind of go right where you want to go. It doesn't have a lot of leeway, but that works. This is really cool as well. So by doing it this way, with a full block and then a 2x1 ramp tip, it allows you to use a base ramp, 2x1 base, to create the same shape, but inset towards the wall, and then you can do a full block behind that. And then when you get here, you can put a corner for wrapping around and keeping the shape going. So that's a really cool wall design, if you're looking for kind of a Imperial Star Wars kind of vibe. That's got a similar to that hexagon kind of shape to it, and it keeps that kind of sort of angled, slanted, along the kickboards and the trim up top. It keeps that same kind of shape. There's a lot of these cool designs, as well as using these half blocks and stuff to create little shelf units and things. Now, one thing that I was told in my description for my last, or in the comments of my last inspiration episode, was that in this particular build, lighting did factor into it, and I can see these cool fans, which look, or I'm assuming are meant to look like industrial fans, which works really well. Again, we're seeing that kind of rounded that we've seen before, that rounded technique where you're using the base and the half blocks and then just kind of mirroring them. The fan, I believe, is just half slopes with what looks like a decoy and then a rotor head, or a rotor part. So it's an odd choice of blocks, because you could use pretty much anything. As I don't know why the decoys, I think that's a decoy. Can't get in here. I don't really know if there's a reason behind the decoy or not, but yeah, it's cool. But I was told that unless it was inherently dark, that mood lighting and stuff was actually factored into this build, which I can actually see is very true. So if you saw this on the inspiration episode, I'll probably have my lamps off a bit more in this one to try and show it both ways. So because I do love mood lighting like this. I love this kind of stuff, but oftentimes when I'm recording a video like this, it gets kind of dark, and so then I turn my lights on so everybody can see a little bit better. But in cases where the lighting specifically was done on purpose, I do try to show it off. Now, this, I don't know where... This may be what the gravity generator was for outside. I'm not sure. But there does seem to be some kind of gravity field here to create the gravity walk, essentially, because, we don't actually have ladders anymore. I'm not bitter. But, so yeah, there is that. Now, if you were okay with modding or something, this would be a good spot to actually add, like, the ladder mod or something. My point is that I don't know where the gravity is coming from, but it runs all along these ladders. So I'm not sure if that's what the gravity generator outside was for or not. Oh, this is kind of cool, though. It has more of a yellow industrial feel over there and stuff. And so again, we're seeing that fan up there coming through the checkerboard pattern here, which is pretty cool. There's a doorway shape here, but I don't see a door. Now, this I want to actually point out as being something interesting. I love this style of doorway, like this panel shape where you have the slightly beveled corners. I love that shape for space ships and other type designs. But this one is done very simply. It is just solid blocks and then half slopes in the corners. That's it. And you could do this with, like, say, airtight hangar doors or something like that, and then put a door frame like this on both sides and create kind of a cool rectangle, beveled, cornered shaped door, even though there really isn't that in vanilla. Now, I don't really know what these grooves on the side are for other than just decoration, but that's also something to note. Another cool thing... Oh, sorry. Just my mouse freaked out for a second there. Another cool thing is this is a neat way to do an inset roof, or I believe it's called a tray ceiling in real estate, real homes, home design architecture. I'm not sure. But they have a solid block ceiling that then leads to a vertical ramp tip, and then the 2x1 corners in the corners, but they're flipped backwards, and it creates a kind of an inset in the roof, which is pretty cool. And you can see that same doorway design right there as well, that it gives it kind of a hex, not a hex. Well, I guess technically it might be considered a hexagon, but it's more of a rectangle with beveled corners. But, you know, who knows what it's actually supposed to be called. I'm probably going to get a comment or two about that, so feel free. I don't know what these lights exactly are for, unless they're supposed to be simulating a doorway, because it does kind of have the grooves in there to kind of look like it could be one of those mirrored door panels that retract after the latches open or something. I'm not really sure, because they just kind of blink, but I haven't seen them do anything. This looks like a cool, maybe like a little couch or a sofa type area. I'm not really sure. It's not really like there's anything around there, so I'm not really sure if that's for anything or not. This area I don't think is supposed to be this dark. Maybe it is. I'm trying not to use my lights as much so everybody gets the mood lighting, but there's a couple of these areas that are just really dark. Now this is cool. I cannot stress enough how much I've fallen in love with blast door block stairs. I think it's really, really cool, and the blast doors as a floor I totally missed. I think what I like about them is if done correctly, it kind of just looks like tile, which I like better than the random textures on the steel regular block type thing. I do like the tiled look. Okay, now this is probably going to take us down to the engineering area, I think. And this is kind of another, like I said, there's a lot of the same kinds of things we've seen before, but it's all done beautifully well and executed very well. This is another cool example of the blast doors. We've got a blast door ceiling, and then what looks like regular block, I think. Can't quite get my cursor on there. I don't think that's blast doors. I think that's regular light armor. And then the ramp bases going into the blast doors, and then you've got the double corner lights, which is cool. Makes a nice little overhead with an indent in the ceiling. On the wall, I didn't really pay too much attention to the shape here, but this is kind of cool. They did a full 2x1 ramp with a 1x1 slope on top to give it kind of a... I'm gonna go with diamond, like a jewel diamond shape, not like like the 4-point diamond, but like more of a jewelry diamond or gem. We could call it a gem shape. If you wanted to go old school, go back to the 80s, we could say it's like a ring pop shape, because it kind of looks like a ring pop. Anyways, moving on. That's a cool way to do that, though, is the 2x1 ramp, solid block, 1x1, and then 3 solids on the top. That works really well. The hatchway things are kind of cool, too. This one's done a little bit odd. I can't quite... Okay, so there's an inverted base, a 2x1 base, and then we've got the 2x1 tips to a half slope shape on the sides, and then the 1x1s in the corner. That's interesting. It's a little bit different. Alright, so where does this take us? Now, I will say, the gravity works really well here, but you probably have... Yeah, you have to crouch, so bear that in mind. Now, this room down here, I'm a fan of. This is super cool. It's got the industrial kind of feel, but it also kind of makes me feel like I'm on a Star Destroyer in the Empire. Probably the black and red, but still works great. I also like the exposed conveyors. It makes it feel a bit more engineering and industrial kind of thing. But yeah, the mix of using blast door blocks for a tile footpath and then the light armor, really cool technique. I really like that. And then this is also pretty cool too. It's using 2x1 bases along the whole edge, but then only having the actual 2x1 tips pop out every now and again to give it some extra texture and depth, which is pretty cool. All in all, I really like some of the connection between some of these shape designs, that they actually merge into other shape designs, and they do it fairly well, and it works really well. I mentioned these actually in the inspiration episode. I do like these wall panels. They're the two sets of bases back to back, essentially, and then in the middle there's a corner light facing away, and it not only gives it kind of a backlit feel, it's not like right in your face. It's kind of got a little bit more of a softer lighting effect. But the shapes actually look cool too, as far as it makes it look like there's almost that greeble type thing. It just adds a bit more something to it, that it doesn't have a purpose, but it's just kind of there, and it just looks cool. Now this one definitely has either an engineering or mad scientist vibe. I can't figure out which one it feels more like. It kind of feels like an operating table for some crazy scientist person, but this is a pretty interesting shape though. We've got the half blocks and the half slopes facing away, and it kind of makes this almost fan shape. I'm not sure if that's what the intention was, but it kind of looks like one of these fans to me. And then we've got some definite industrial feel going on over here with the fan and the orange light and stuff, but it works really well. And I like that even though there's some exposed conveyors here and there, there's actually some like fake pipes that were built just for aesthetics, which is pretty cool. Like using the slopes, or the rounded slopes and things. It's pretty neat overall. Now, one thing that I may end up... Again, I could probably do 2 episodes on this ship, because there's just so much to see. This is probably one of the most space efficient builds I've seen in a long time, and what I mean by that is the profile of the ship and the size of the overall hull when compared to how much crap is actually in this ship is astonishing. Like, the ship is big, but let's be honest, there are just a ton of rooms in this ship. It's just huge. So it's actually really, really neat that out of all the different designs and things that I've seen in small ship, like, this just has the most packed into it. So I actually would not be opposed to doing a second episode on this ship if you guys still want to see more and aren't satisfied and didn't feel like we got a complete look through. I actually don't have a problem with that this time, because this is really... There's a lot to see in this build. Especially this room in here. I do like the lighting. The lighting definitely works in this room. It's very chill. I do like these too. This is kind of cool, like terminal type shapes. It's just the base ramps and then the inverted corners along the edge with a panel and a light on top of them. It's really cool. Very simple, but very neat. And then we got simple couches using the rounded slopes, which I do think those don't get used very often. I personally can't ever figure out a use for them, so it's always cool when I see somebody using something, or using the rounded blocks in something, and it makes it actually kind of cool. The other thing that I just now remembered is a spot right here. I forgot about that. I've been playing Space Engineers long enough, I forgot that they added a walk option. So I do kind of recommend having your cat block on so that you can actually walk around and it's not flying by you as much, kind of thing, because it is a small space. Even though it all works really well, it is a little bit more tight quarters. Now, one thing that I wanted to look at in particular, and it's probably the last thing I'm going to focus on in this episode. I mean, there's all these cool things like this, and there's all kinds of stuff that I'm not even touching on, and you guys are probably seeing. That's why I said I wouldn't actually mind doing another episode on it. But one of the things I want to focus on are these elevators. Because they're insane. So just the elevator on its own is cool. It's using what looks to be a LCD panel. Not a wide one, but just a regular one. And then half block armor around the outer edge, it looks like. Then we've got regular, we've got a couple slopes, then we've got some lights. The lights are probably run by a script, but I think you could do that just with setting the blink interval, so it may not. We've got a little inset in the top to just give it a little something. And then we've got the elevator up and down triggers. Now what I'm going to actually do for this one is I'm going to trigger it, if I can. Hello? Right. I guess we're at the top. Oh, come on. Oh, I want it out. Alright. Because I really want to... Actually, I needed to go the other way. Crap. Okay. So I ended up deciding to do the spectator camera mode because I figured it'll be easier to try and get up in the elevator shaft and check this out. So hopefully we can get a good view of this, though unfortunately now it's compacted. I should have looked at it when it was extended. But it looks like we've got two pistons. There is a main piston, but what's interesting about the way this is set up is we've got a piston and then two half slopes, a blast door block, presumably for collision avoidance to make use of the altered collision boxes, and then a half slope to connect to another piston, and kind of so on and so forth, that we've got another set of the same thing here that then connects to this through that. We've got one here that then connects to this through that, and then it goes down one. We've got another piston here, and then the process kind of repeats. Now the part I'm not sure about is how these are all being controlled. I don't know if it's being done through a timer block or a programmable script, but that seems to be kind of the pattern. Is you connect the two half slopes to a blast door to another half slope that then connects to a second piston that then is lateral. Essentially, it doesn't go down. They're on the same level, and it looks like there are 3 of those, and then if you went to do another layer, the fourth one would then have a second piston and the process loops. So that's pretty cool. And then a solid block at the end, and by using half blocks and the blast door blocks, they're avoiding the collision issues and so on. And then we've got the half block outline that I mentioned before that makes up the outer frame of the elevator, so that it's a little bit more filled in, but you're also not scraping with another layer of the light block. So the half blocks are a nice little alternative for that. Now, as for... I forget what the button is. I gotta get my character up here. Give me a second. Actually, no I don't. I just needed to realize that there's a call button, because if there wasn't, you could get stuck, which is not ideal. So I went ahead and checked, and this does actually use a timer elevator, a timer block. So what I'd like to do is... I need to find something that gives me access. There we go. Alright, so we have the different elevator blocks. I just need to grab one and see. So we have no delay, really. Now, setup actions. Let's see what we've got here. So piston 2 on, and that's a reverse. But it's only for 1. which is really odd. I can't figure that out. They're only using one piston control. So let me see. Oh, unless it's groups. Ah, okay. It's a group of pistons. That makes a lot more sense. So it's... Alright, so this group seems to be set to a 0.1 velocity, 2 maximum distance, 0.3 minimum distance, 50... Ugh, I don't remember what that measurement is for. It's for force, I believe. Kilo... newtons? I don't remember if that's how you do force. I suck at physics, so let's just call this momentum. But, yeah, maximum force the piston is allowed to apply to a blocking obstacle along its extending axis. There you go. So it's resistance force, essentially. So those are set to 50. I don't know if some of those are default for pistons. They probably are. Safety detach is 5. Okay, so... more than likely what's happening here is actually very simple. If you set up the elevators the way we saw, where they're kind of these alternating sequences, then it's turning on the whole group and reversing the whole group, and then you have the piston set to that. So it's fairly simple, it's just really elegantly done, basically. So... oh. Hello? There we go. So as you can see, all of the pistons are essentially reversing at the same time, and it causes a cascade effect type of thing. Which is really creative. Like, it's so simple, but it works so well. That's got to be one of the smoothest elevators I've ever seen done in vanilla. Not to mention, if you followed this pattern of... because essentially what's happening is most of the pistons... I can probably get in here with my... yeah, my character now. Whoop, wrong button. So one of the things is that most of the pistons are 2-ish. I think it's 2 blocks. Maybe a little bit of space for the piston part. But they're mainly 2 blocks. So by only going up one and then attaching another piston here, you're essentially lowering every row by 1. But when they retract, they're all going to be the same height, which is why it's so creative and cool. Is it's like it would basically keep them all compacted to the same level, but then when they extend, it's going to do this kind of stair-stepping effect, which is really, really cool. I really like that. So like I said, we're almost out of time for this episode, but I feel like we barely got to touch on anything. Even this kind of stuff, this decorative stuff in the ceiling is pretty cool too. So let me know if you guys would want to see a second episode. Why am I stuck? What am I stuck on right now? That was weird. I got stuck under this lamp or something. Let me know if you guys would want to see another episode on this particular build, because I'm actually open to it. Normally I like to do a new build every episode, but there's just so much we could kind of dissect in this, that if everybody wanted to see more, I wouldn't mind. I also wanted to throw out that if you guys would like to see some different stuff in the Reverse Engineer series, if there's custom turrets or things like that that you'd like to see broken down, or kind of more science-y rather than just analysis. I kind of looked at things and analyzed this is how they were building it, but I don't do as much breaking down and constructing it myself. And I am getting stuck under these lamps, by the way. Walk under them at your own risk. Essentially what I'm getting at is that I started this series off of a viewer suggestion, and so as opposed to most of the other ones, I didn't actually have a whole big investment in how I did this series. It was more to do something that other people wanted to see. So if there's any kind of structure change or topics or something that you'd like me to cover more differently, or do it a different way, or try some things out, let me know. I'm considering putting an other option in the poll every week in the inspiration episode, and if you guys had other suggestions besides the 3, then, you know, like leaving a comment but voting for other things, and then I can go review the comments and things like that, and go from there. But I've had a couple of questions about would I be reviewing like custom turrets and breaking down how those are built and things like that, or doing kind of experiments to see how well does a hull hold up against certain turrets and things like that. And I got thinking about it, and I was like, I could kind of turn it into a bit more of a tutorial-like series where we see one thing and then, like, you know, basically replicate it, and I show you how to do it, how to repeat the process, like these elevators. I could show, this is the one thing I wanted to look at, and then go build it myself and show you kind of the breakdown. So let me know if any of that kind of stuff interests you. If so, leave your suggestions in the comments and whatnot. But in the meantime, we're going to wrap things up here. Let me know if you'd like to see another video on the Apollo, and we can keep going from where we are. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap things up. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I will see you all next time. Peace.